This is another forgotten Black history story, and it's a tragic one too. I'm going to tell you that right now. But this story is less about the tragedy of what happened to one Black man and more about how one Black family's success led to an entire community coming together to commit a horrific act. Pay attention to this story and learn how Black progress has often been met with violent backlash. This is the story of Norris Dendy. Norris Dendy was a 33-year-old Black man who lived in Clinton, South Carolina, who lost his life to racial mob violence. But before I tell you about what happened to Norris, I have to tell you about his family. Because as much as this story is about what happened to Norris, it's about the story about his family. And you really can't understand why this happened until you understand who the Dendys were and how their success angered an entire white community in Clinton, South Carolina. Norris was born to Young and Martha Dendy in May of 1900. Both were the children of formerly enslaved Black people. Young was a carpenter and Martha washed clothes. Together they had 9 children. They worked hard and saved and were able to grow their businesses. Young was able to move from carpentry and into contracting. He built many of the buildings and homes for white people in Clinton. Martha was also able to expand her business and had employees working for her for a laundry business. They were able to send all of their children to college. One was a dentist. Another worked in New York City as a post office clerk. One operated the family store, and another was a principal of a local school. The Dendy family lived a good life for Black people during that time. They lived in a nice home and had financial freedom. They were the most prominent Black family in Clinton, South Carolina. The Dendy success was resented by poorer whites in Clinton who were relegated to working at the mills and barely made enough to make ends meet back then. Norris had gone to State College of South Carolina, now called South Carolina State University. He later went to Virginia Union University. He then returned to Clinton. He married Amanda Fant in 1924 and had 5 children. It was during this time that all the trouble started. In 1924, Young and Martha Dendy decided to build a larger home for their growing family. They wanted a place that could accommodate their children and their families for gatherings. So they purchased a large lot in a good neighborhood on the outskirts of town. It was 1 block from where the white people lived at. Young Dendy built the home himself. As he was building it, the home became the talk of the town. The house was grand and large and considered better than the white homes in the area. One day, Young Dendy received a letter that had a skull and crossbones on it. The letter said that if the Dendys built their home right there and not with the rest of the Black people, harm would come to the family. It said that they were too rich to be a Black family and that Norris Dendy would die soon. Norris had become a target of the white people in Clinton. He was well educated, well dressed, and confident. He was everything that they hated in a Black man back then, and really still to this day. He had been arrested on false charges twice. Both times without any evidence, he was convicted, and both times those convictions were overturned on appeal. The fact that the Dendys could hire the best lawyer to represent Norris added more fuel to the fire. And in July of 1933, the mob made good on their promise. On July 4th, 1933, Norris was driving his truck to a picnic at Lake Murray in South Carolina. Allegedly, Norris got into a fight with a 22-year-old white man named Marvin Lawless about which man's truck was faster. Lawless cursed Norris, and Norris allegedly hit Lawless in his lip in response. Whether this is true, we'll never know. Norris tried to flee and to get away, but he was stopped by a police officer in Goldville who arrested him. Norris was then taken to the Clinton jail. Once at the jail, men began to gather outside. By 9 p.m., a mob of white men filled the police station. One man, Hubert Pitts, arrived with a rope, and that was a signal that it was time to end this and to end Norris. Norris's wife, Amanda, she came to visit him shortly after he was arrested. Later that night, she returned with their 5 children and his mother, Martha, to see him. As they approached, they heard Norris screaming. When they got inside of the jail, they saw a room filled with white men. When they tried to intervene, one man hit Norris's mother. Another man, Pack Pitts, fired his weapon at them and told them to leave the jail. Norris's mother, Martha, pleaded with the men and the police that she would pay the fine and whatever it was if they would just release Norris. A police officer told her that Norris could not pay his way out of this. The mob then took Norris from his cell and dragged him out of the jail. They then put him in a car and drove off. Norris's wife, his mother, and children saw them as they did this. They beat Norris severely. They beat him so many times and so much in the head that they fractured his skull. But they didn't stop there. They then hanged Norris. Afterwards, they dumped his body at Sardis Church, 7 miles outside of Clinton. The next morning, Norris's body was found. After the incident, the state conducted an investigation. Detectives came from Columbia and talked to the citizens and those with knowledge. After the investigation, South Carolina Governor Eber Blackwood said that he believed that Norris's life had been unlawfully taken and that the state would find and prosecute those responsible for his death. But after the 2 detectives returned to Columbia, nothing happened. Robert Dendy, one of Norris's older brothers, he took up the charge to try to get his brother justice. With the help of attorney Nathaniel J. Frederick, the family was put in touch with NAACP Assistant Secretary Roy Wilkins. I've talked about Attorney Frederick before in a couple of videos, and I'm not going to go over everything again, but I'll say that he was a force to be reckoned with, and he championed the cause of black people long before the civil rights movement of the 1950s and the 1960s. Check out my videos on Ben Bass and James and Ada Sanders to learn more about Attorney Frederick. Robert Dendy hired an NAACP investigator in August of 1933. The investigator interviewed many witnesses in Clinton and conducted a very exhaustive investigation. He talked to eyewitnesses, some of whom told him that much, if not all, the police force took part in the lynching. The NAACP was able to get affidavits from several of these witnesses. They even brought some of them to New York City where they could testify in private without the fear of being harmed back in Clinton. On February 17, 1934, the coroner's jury heard testimony from several of these witnesses, including Norris's mother Martha and his wife Amanda. A white man named F.A. Geets also testified. He said that he saw Norris taken from the jail by Hubert Pitts and J. Pitts Ray and driven away. Another white man named William Crawford said that he saw several men, including the chief of police, participating in what was going on that night. He said that he saw Norris taken to the car and saw Marvin Lawless beating Norris in the back seat. Another white man, Ernest Mims, he said that he saw the police open Norris's cell for the mob. After hearing the evidence, the coroner's jury decided that Norris Dendy had died by parties unknown. On February 19, 1934, Solicitor Homer Blackwell presented a petition to the grand jury to indict 5 men: Marvin Lawless, P.M. Pitts, Hubert Pitts, Roy Pitts, and J. Pitts Ray. After hearing the case, the grand jury adjourned without any action. Robert Dendy did not give up, though. He got NAACP Secretary Walter White to write to the governor of South Carolina asking that the grand jury reconvene. But when the grand jury reconvened again in June of 1934, it still did not hold anyone accountable. The Dendy family then turned their attention to trying to hold the county civilly liable for what happened to Norris. The family hired prominent white attorney W.R. Ritchie Sr. to help them sue Lawrence County, where Clinton sat. Before filing the lawsuit, Norris's father, Young Denny, and attorney Ritchie went to the Lawrence County Board of Commissioners and told them that the county was liable for the lynching of Norris, and they were required to pay the Norris family at least $2,000, according to South Carolina's anti-lynching statute. They said that the board could pay them $2,000 immediately, or they sue the county and possibly get more at trial. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. You're probably saying, what South Carolina statute? Well, at that time, the federal government refused to pass anti-lynching statutes, but a handful of states passed their own aimed at discouraging these barbaric acts of violence. South Carolina was one of them. The statute was passed in 1896. It's actually still current law to this day. The statute imposes liability on a county where a lynching occurred for failing to prevent the act. The problem was that the statute was rarely enforced, and a 1930 study found that only 6 counties had ever paid fines. To avoid paying the fines, most counties failed to report lynchings or called them something else. After Young Dendy and attorney Ritchie told the board that they planned to invoke this statute and demanded money, the board said that Norris's death was not approved lynching, implying that the grand jury did not charge anyone and that there were no criminal convictions in this case. The board rejected the claim. However, it must be noted that the board agreed to pay $25 to a man for an injury to his mule that same night. The Dendys filed suit in April of 1935 against Lawrence County, but things did not go as planned. Attorney Ritchie died at age 81 the next year in January of 1936. There is no record of the case being heard in court after this. Despite what this tragedy did to the Dendys, Norris's family persevered. One of his sons, Norris Furman Dendy Sr., he earned a bachelor's degree and a master's degree and served honorably in the U.S. Army, rising to the rank of lieutenant colonel. He was a decorated veteran, having served in Vietnam and received numerous accolades, including the Purple Heart. He later had a successful career working for AT&T. He recently died in March of 2024 at the age of 92. What happened to Norris Dendy should serve as a reminder of what black people have gone through in this country. We are a people that have faced tremendous brutality and injustice simply because we are black. Our blackness has been and continues to be our crime. The Dendy family did everything they could to provide a better life for their children, and still, injustice came knocking at their door. And sadly, it's still that way for many black families. I want to know your thoughts on this video. Had you ever heard of Norris Dendy and what happened to him, and how did it make you feel learning about his family and all that they experienced? Drop me a comment down below and let me know what you think.